This person is making a very big decision about you right now. Listen closely to this, because what I'm about to describe might be unfolding inside someone's mind at this exact moment, quietly, privately, in a way you may have no idea is even happening. There's someone out there who has been thinking about you far more intensely than they're willing to admit, even to themselves. You might feel like there's distance between you two right now. You might feel disconnected or confused by how quiet things have gotten. On the surface, everything might look calm, maybe even a little cold. But what you don't realize is that this person is standing at one of the most important emotional crossroads of their entire life. The decision in front of them is not small. It's not something they're making lightly or without thought. It's a deep, weighty decision about you, not just your name, your messages, or the memories the two of you built together, but about you as a presence, as a person who genuinely mattered in their world. You walked into their life carrying real meaning, and now they're looking inward, asking themselves whether to move toward you or move away, whether to choose you or choose to keep living inside their fear, whether to hold on or finally let go. This isn't a decision that can be rushed, and it isn't one they can quietly ignore either, because you were never a small side note in their story. You're a chapter they can't close without confronting who they actually are underneath everything. Right now, they're fighting a silent battle. From the outside, everything probably looks completely normal. They're going to work, seeing friends, smiling like nothing's wrong. They might even act like none of this bothers them at all. But internally, it's a different story entirely. Their thoughts keep circling back to you at the moments they least expect it. Late at night, early in the morning, in those quiet in-between hours when there's nothing left to distract them. That's when the heavy questions show up. They wonder if choosing you would change the entire direction of their life. They worry that waiting too long means losing you for good. And at the same time, they're terrified that if they do finally act, they'll mess it up the same way they've messed things up before. A lot of people don't realize that silence isn't proof someone doesn't care. Very often, silence is just fear wearing a quiet disguise. Some people go quiet because they're terrified of losing control of their own emotions. Some avoid love altogether because they never actually learned how to feel safe inside it. Their hesitation isn't about you not mattering, it's about caring, feeling dangerous to them in a way they don't fully know how to explain. There's an old idea that wherever your fear lives, that's exactly where your real work in life is waiting. You represent a task this person can no longer keep avoiding. Their heart keeps pulling them back toward you. It remembers what it felt like to be truly seen and understood by you, how calm they felt around you in a world that usually moves too fast for anyone to catch their breath. Their heart remembers exactly who they were when you were part of their life. But their mind keeps fighting those same feelings, dragging up old pain, old mistakes, warning them to be careful, asking whether they're strong enough, whether they're even worthy of something like this. That's the tension they're living inside of right now, caught between hope and the need to feel safe, and you're sitting right at the center of that struggle. Not everyone we meet leaves a real mark on us. A lot of people pass through as distractions or quick lessons we forget within a year. But with you, it went deeper than that. You didn't just catch their attention, you changed something inside them. You reached their deepest feelings without ever attacking them. You pushed them outside their comfort zone without ever being cruel about it. You showed them sides of themselves they hadn't looked at honestly in years. You woke up their desire and their fear at exactly the same time, and that's precisely why this decision feels so heavy for them. Choosing you means they have to grow, and growth always feels like a threat to the ego, no matter how much someone consciously wants it. There's a saying that the greatest thing anyone can do with their life is finally become who they actually are. Without ever meaning to, you quietly invited them onto that path. They felt it, even without having the words to explain what exactly had shifted. Around you, they felt more honest, more real. That kind of connection doesn't disappear just because two people stop talking. That's exactly why they haven't forgotten you. That's why your name still stirs something in them, something they feel in their body before their mind even catches up to it. You were never just noise in their life. You were meaning, you were comfort, and you were direction. And when someone stumbles into that kind of meaning, they're forced, whether they like it or not, to look honestly at themselves. There's a hard truth in this. Until someone brings their hidden thoughts into full awareness, those thoughts quietly run their whole life, and they end up calling the result fate, never realizing they had a hand in it the entire time. This person is now standing right at the edge of that truth. They're starting to understand that doing nothing is still a choice, one with real consequences. They know that staying silent for too long could cost them you completely. They know someone else out there might recognize your value and step forward without a moment of hesitation. They know that what they kept putting off appreciating might simply not be there to appreciate forever. At the same time, the past is still loud in their head. Old experiences from before you ever met them are still echoing, still shaping how they respond now. This hesitation isn't always about you specifically. A lot of it is about the ghosts of what happened to them long before your name ever entered their life. There's also a fear they may never say out loud, the fear that they're simply not good enough for you. Real, deep love tends to bring insecurity along with it. When someone finally has something genuinely valuable on the line, the self-doubt gets louder, not quieter. They're wondering whether they can actually be the person this connection needs them to be. This decision is forming quietly, invisibly, in the background of their everyday life. And while it's easy to think their timeline is the only thing that matters here, the way you carry yourself and treat yourself right now matters just as much, maybe more. Sometimes the exact moment someone finally chooses you is the same moment you stop waiting around for them to do it. What you keep fighting stays attached to you. What you finally accept is what actually changes you. And real power tends to show up the moment you stop putting your own life on hold just because someone else is still confused about theirs. That's where your strength really begins to take shape. While they're stuck going in circles with the same tangled thoughts, something inside them is already quietly shifting. Once a person becomes aware of something real, there's no going back to not knowing it. They keep replaying old moments with you, how you listened without judgment, how you gave them space instead of demanding anything from them. Those memories surface at the moments they least expect. And every time they do, it confirms a little more clearly that this connection was never some accident. They're starting to see that you represent a kind of emotional honesty and depth that's genuinely rare. You function almost like a mirror, reflecting back who they are and who they still have the potential to become. And mirrors are deeply uncomfortable for people who aren't ready yet to look their own soul in the eye. That's exactly why they keep going back and forth. One moment wanting to be brave and reach out to you, the next retreating because distance simply feels safer. They tell themselves time will sort everything out on its own, but time doesn't erase a connection built the way yours was. If anything, it only sharpens it, makes it more undeniable. They notice how flat life feels without you in it. You changed something in their inner world, and that kind of change doesn't just fade away quietly. Now they're also wrestling with the weight of responsibility. They're asking themselves whether they can actually show up for you consistently, day after day. They're wondering whether they're capable of being emotionally available, of protecting this connection instead of sabotaging it the moment fear creeps back in. These aren't light questions. They require real maturity to even sit with honestly. Choosing you means no more half-effort, no more vague, non-committal energy. They already know you're not someone who's willing to live inside uncertainty indefinitely. They know you weren't built for games or endless waiting. Choosing you means choosing integrity, full stop. And that's exactly where a lot of people hesitate the most, precisely because they actually care about getting it right. They know that being fully present in your life means they have to evolve, and evolving always comes with a certain amount of accountability. There's no real growth without some discomfort attached to it, and right now they're standing directly on that line. They can also feel that you're changing, even in your silence. They notice a shift in your energy without you having to say a single word about it. You're no longer chasing them or over-explaining yourself. You're more grounded now, more focused on your own life, and that shift makes them genuinely uneasy. When a person stops chasing, the other person quietly loses their sense of control over the situation. When you stop waiting, the full reality of what's happening finally lands on them. They realize you're moving forward regardless, and that your worth was never something that had to sit around waiting for them to make up their mind. That realization creates a real sense of urgency. They start picturing you with someone else, or simply moving on peacefully without them, and that image makes them suddenly aware of exactly how attached they've become. They start fearing rejection. They worry about failing you, about reopening wounds they thought they'd buried. Sometimes people freeze entirely, telling themselves that staying still is somehow neutral ground, but it isn't. Even in that avoidance, a decision is quietly being made. Every day they postpone real courage. They feel the cost of it building. A quiet regret starts to settle in, an awareness that something important is slipping further away. They're learning that they can't replace you with distractions, no matter how hard they try. Silence hasn't brought them peace. It's only brought them a delay. Through all of this, they're slowly learning that avoiding their own feelings isn't sustainable anymore, that safety without any real depth attached to it just feels hollow after a while. The question isn't whether they feel something for you anymore. That was never really in doubt. The real question is whether they're brave enough to actually honor that feeling instead of running from it. Your job in all of this isn't to convince them of anything. Your job is to stay aligned with your own truth. Your power comes from choosing your own growth regardless of what they decide to do with theirs. Whether they step forward now, later, or not at all, the most important work happening right now is happening inside you. The moment you choose yourself fully, you stop arguing for your own worth altogether. Either they rise to meet you where you are, or they step out of the way. Both outcomes move you forward. The people who genuinely look inward are the ones who actually wake up. The tension keeps deepening because this has stopped being just about a relationship. It's become a question of who they are as a person. Choosing you means choosing an entirely new way of showing up in the world, a higher standard for themselves. That can be genuinely frightening. Some people are perfectly comfortable wanting someone from a safe distance, but they panic at the reality of an actual relationship. When a bond is as strong as yours, it demands something real, something with weight behind it. This is often the stage where people try to sabotage things without even realizing it, inventing excuses about timing, dressing up fear as logic. But underneath all of that, they're simply scared of failing at something that genuinely matters to them. You touch something at their core, and it makes them question whether they can actually be what you need, whether they can be consistent, whether they can be someone reliable instead of someone who disappears the moment things get real. Choosing you means they can no longer hide behind vagueness. They'd have to be fully seen, fully accountable for their own actions. And that level of exposure feels terrifying to someone who has spent years protecting themselves from exactly that kind of visibility. But they're also watching your strength in all of this. They see that you're not falling apart without them. You're not begging to be noticed or chasing after their attention. You're simply embodying your own worth, quietly and consistently, and that's precisely what makes you so hard to walk away from for good. They miss how they felt when they were around you. They compare everyone else they meet to you, and nobody quite measures up. Genuine authenticity leaves a mark that doesn't fade easily from memory. They're realizing that avoiding the connection entirely doesn't actually make the feeling go away. The idea of you moving on is starting to feel painfully real to them now. They picture you finding peace with someone who doesn't hesitate the way they have, and that image creates a sharp, immediate regret. They worry about letting something rare slip through their fingers simply because fear kept them frozen in place. This is when their internal questioning becomes direct and unavoidable. They start wondering if their own fear is about to cost them a genuinely once-in-a-lifetime chance. Clarity is forming in them because you've shown them, without meaning to, their own long-standing pattern of running away. You are not required to sit around in uncertainty waiting for someone else to catch up. Your role is simply to keep building a life that feels good and true to you. When they sense they might actually lose access to you because you keep evolving without them, their decision sharpens considerably. They feel that you're no longer available for games, and they know they have to decide, decisively, whether to step forward with a real plan or step back and finally let it go. There's no comfortable middle ground left to hide in anymore. Something bigger than either of you seems to be responding to this moment. Connections that are meant to grow tend to find a way through the fear eventually. Connections that only existed to teach us something tend to quietly fade once we've stopped growing from them. Right now, the energy between you is building. Soon, something in the real, tangible world is going to shift. A message, a choice, a visible change. Until then, stay firmly rooted in your own worth. When you stop negotiating your value down for anyone, the world eventually stops trying to negotiate you down too. The pressure is genuinely on them now, because life itself is answering the question on their behalf whether they act or not. Their indecision is draining them more than they'd probably admit. They're realizing they have to walk through some darkness first if they ever want to find the light waiting on the other side of it. You've become a kind of mirror for them, and for the first time in a while, they're seeing themselves clearly through it. They're asking themselves honestly whether they've been living a life shaped by fear or a life shaped by truth. They sense that you've stopped waiting, and that awareness makes the clock feel like it's ticking louder and faster. They understand that to actually have you, they have to become someone real. This is the point where they either find the courage to step forward, or they stay exactly where they've always been. Either way, the truth is coming regardless of what they choose. You, meanwhile, are reclaiming your own peace throughout all of this. Love was never something meant to be earned through anxious effort. It's something you allow into your life once you're standing in your own worth, when you're in balance with yourself, when you stop making yourself smaller to accommodate someone else's confusion. Everything starts to come into focus. The outcome, whatever it turns out to be, is already on its way. If they step forward, it will be because they finally found real purpose behind the decision. If they step back instead, it will be because they reached the edge of what their fear could tolerate. Either path hands you the truth you've been waiting for. You're no longer suspended somewhere in doubt. You're grounded in yourself now. Silence has stopped being neutral territory. At this point, it functions as its own kind of answer. Real love is about two people being genuinely aligned. If someone is truly meant to be with you, fear won't be enough to stop them from showing up. And if they ultimately don't choose you, that outcome simply points you toward wherever you're actually meant to go next. The most important decision in this entire story was always the one you made about yourself, long before they ever made theirs. As the emotional intensity between the two of you reaches this peak, something shifts, and a new phase quietly begins. One where the weight of the past starts losing its grip over the present moment. This person is entering a stretch of deep reflection, weighing the safety of the life they already know against the vivid possibility of a life that actually includes you. They're beginning to realize that the walls they built to protect themselves are the exact same walls that have kept them isolated and lonely all this time. The silence they once used as a shield has slowly turned into a mirror, reflecting their own unmet needs directly back at them. They're starting to understand that every day they choose to stay hidden is another day they're losing the chance at being genuinely understood by someone who actually sees them. Their internal struggle is finally turning into something they have to face outwardly instead of just quietly inside their own head. They watch the way you move through your life now, with purpose, with self-respect, and it acts almost like a magnetic pull they can't fully explain away. This has stopped being a question of whether you're right for them. On some level, they already know that answer. What's actually in question now is whether they're ready to become someone worthy of standing next to you. They're questioning whether they have the strength to release the older versions of themselves, the ones shaped entirely by old hurt and self-protection. They can see clearly that you've already done the work to heal and grow, and that recognition stirs a real, urgent desire in them to catch up to where you already are, not out of competition, but out of a genuine wish to match your frequency instead of getting left behind in the version of life they're slowly outgrowing. As this internal shift takes hold, you might start noticing small signs of them reappearing in your space. A brief message, a subtle check-in, some small change in how they show up around you. None of these are random. They're quiet tests the person is running on themselves, checking whether they can actually handle the intensity of this connection again, testing the waters of vulnerability to see if it's finally safe to dive back in. Your only job during this stretch is to keep standing exactly where you already are, in your own power, in your own peace. You don't need to reach out and steady them. You don't need to build the bridge for them. That gap belongs to them to close, and the only way they'll ever find the courage to cross it is by recognizing fully that you were always worth the journey it takes to get there. This whole stretch of the process is really about the final collapse of their own ego's resistance. They're coming to terms with the fact that they can't control every outcome, and that real love always asks for a leap of faith somewhere along the way. They're shifting from a place of overthinking into a place of simply being, finally understanding that no amount of logic is ever going to resolve something that lives in the soul rather than the mind. The decision is quietly finalizing itself in the most private corners of their heart. Soon, the internal pressure they've been carrying will become too much to keep contained, and the silence is going to have to break one way or another. Whether it ends in a new beginning together or in a final clear understanding of why things had to change, you're standing right at the edge of a genuine breakthrough, and you're ready for it, because you've already done the one thing that actually mattered most. You already chose yourself. I want to say something else here too, something that doesn't always get said clearly enough in moments like this. None of what's happening on their side changes what's true on yours. Their timeline, their fear, their internal tug-of-war, none of it is a measure of your worth. It's easy when you're the one waiting to start quietly rewriting the story in your own head, wondering if the silence means you weren't enough, wondering if you misread the whole connection from the start. You didn't. What you felt was real. What they felt was real, too. The gap between those two truths isn't proof that something was fake. It's proof that one of you is further along in doing the work than the other. That's not a flaw in the connection. That's just where two people happen to be standing right now, at two different points on two different paths that are still somehow circling back toward each other. There's also something worth naming about the specific kind of patience this moment calls for, because it's easy to confuse patience with waiting, and the two aren't the same thing at all. Waiting is passive. Waiting means putting your own life in a holding pattern, checking your phone, replaying old conversations, measuring your days by whether or not they reached out. Patience, the kind that actually serves you here, looks completely different. It means living your life fully, regardless of what they decide. It means building the version of your future you'd want even if they never come around at all. It means treating your own growth as the actual point of all of this, rather than treating it as a strategy to win someone back. Ironically, that's usually the exact thing that makes someone finally find the courage to step forward, not because you performed indifference to manipulate a reaction out of them, but because you genuinely stopped needing their decision in order to feel complete. It's worth remembering, too, that not every version of this story ends with them stepping forward, and that's all right. Some connections exist to teach us something essential about ourselves and then quietly close, not because either person failed, but because the lesson was already delivered in full. If that ends up being your story, it doesn't erase anything that was real between you. It simply means the growth you were meant to take from this has already happened, whether or not they ever find their own way to it. Either outcome, them stepping forward or them stepping back for good, gives you exactly what you actually need, which was never really them. It was clarity. It was the version of yourself that no longer bends, negotiates, or shrinks to make someone else's fear more comfortable to carry. So whatever happens next, whatever message does or doesn't come, whatever choice they eventually make, you can hold on to this one thing with complete certainty. You already did the hardest part. You chose yourself first. Everything else that unfolds from here is simply the world responding to a decision you made a long time ago.